Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, From Gen Z to Boomers, Understanding and Supporting Men's Health in the Workplace. My name is Gemma and I'm part of the marketing team here at ILX. We'll just give it another moment for others to join.
Gives me a chance to grab my tea.
Brilliant.
Good thinking. Good thinking.
I know, quick sip of water. Before I hand over to Feras and Paula shortly, there's a few housekeeping bits that I need to do. Are you ready to
Yeah, sure.
move on the slide, please, Feras? Brilliant. So firstly, you'll notice you're all on mute. Please can you remain on mute throughout the session. If you do only have any questions as we go through, there's a question box in the panel on the side of the screen where you can type them in. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, so we'll try to answer them as we go through. Secondly, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a follow-up email from us tomorrow with a link so you can watch again and forward on to your colleagues. We also like to say, give us a follow on social. We're active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And finally, today's session is going to last around 45 minutes, but there'll be some time for questions and answers throughout and at the end if we need to. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to you, Feras and Paula.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to quickly introduce myself, then I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Paula. My name is Feras. I'm a business psychologist. I'm a trainer in leadership, management, influencing, and I've worked globally. But this topic is a passion of mine because our mental health, our emotional intelligence is really key, and we can really make a difference with this. So this is something that I work on myself, but also I help organizations work on, and managers know how to support others. So now I'm going to pass you on to Paula so she can introduce herself.
Oh, thank you, Feras. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you today. My name is Paula Okolo. I'm the Sales and Wellbeing Manager here at ILX. I've been here for an awful long time, around about 21 years. But like Feras, this is a real passion of mine. I have a husband and 2 grown-up boys and appreciate fully the demands that brings, and particularly around men's health and well-being. So it really matters to me today that we deliver this to you, but also get your feedback, just as Feras says. So I really do hope that you enjoy it and you gain a lot from it. And please let it be as interactive as you possibly can while we share the slides with you. Thanks, Feras.
So I'm going to move on to the agenda. So, Paula, do you want to do the agenda?
Certainly. So today's agenda will be covering mental health issues, including stress, depression, and loneliness. Physical health, particularly as well, and the issues and the role of prevention. Prevention for me as Wellbeing Manager here at ILX is absolutely key around everything that we do. If we can prevent things, then that means all the difference. The behavioural effects and the lifestyle factors that are involved. Masculinity and the stigma and the social pressures. And again, I touched on before why I do this and why it matters to me. And for me, that's a real key part of today's webinar for you all. And why some men delay seeking help and they reach, obviously, to a certain point. So, as I say, I hope you enjoy it. And please do ask as many questions as you need to. Thanks, Feras.
Pleasure. So I know that ILX has done lots of things around well-being and being mental first aider. We're going to talk a little bit about why this matters. But Paula, do you want to share a little bit about being well-being lead or mental health first aider?
Certainly, thank you. It's been my role here that I've acquired in the last, I'd say just over 2.5 years now, in really wanting to do everything I can to support the well-being of the organisation. It's over 80 people that we have now, all varying in different ages. So it's really important to make sure that we understand our teams and what works well for them. Part of my role involves many things, which we'll touch on in a moment. But it's something to be really proud of, I think, that here at ILX that we have this role in place. One of the key things for me to do was to instigate the mental health first aid training. of which we have 24 accredited mental health practitioners here, which is huge for an organisation of our size. So that's just one of many things. But as a role, it's there to support all of our teams, our trainers, the people that work with us at home and in an office, and provide all-round wellbeing health support.
Fantastic. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Feras.
So it's really important when we think about this stuff. Why does it matter? So the reality is this is something that affects all of us, because either this is something that affects us personally, or we know somebody who's affected by this, or we're working with somebody who's affected by us. So the stats speak volumes around this. So 70% of deaths by suicide are male, but only 36% of NHS talking therapies go to men. So the indication shows that men are less likely to seek help, even though they might need it more in certain instances. This is quite dramatic, but the idea that one man takes his own life every 2 hours is quite a sobering statistic. And as a member of the middle-aged men group, we are the most at risk of suicide in the UK. And this is something that I have to be aware of as somebody who is, dealing with stress and other situations, but also supporting my friends or the people I manage. So this is something that affects families, communities, organization, and can affect us not just in terms of suicide, but we're much more likely to die prematurely across all age groups. So what we're saying here is this is something that's important to deal with and to talk about and raise awareness of. But luckily, there's lots of support. And as these things say, we should not be suffering quietly, and we should seek help if we're struggling, but also how can we support others? So at the end of this webinar, we're going to talk about where people can get further support, where they can get further information. This is the start of the conversation. So we mentioned about the different age groups. So let's start with the baby boomers. So those are the people who were born between 1946 to 1964, roughly between 60 to 80 years old. They either have left the workforce or just leaving the workforce now. And they were the people who were raised during post-World War II era. So that era, and people went through this idea of traditional values, stiff upper lip, stoicism was very strong. So showing vulnerability was seen as weakness, and discussing mental health was taboo. And people of that generation find it very difficult to open up and discuss it. And they're more susceptible to isolation and late onset depression. So you might have heard the term, the loneliness epidemic. That's because people who are within that baby boomer generation are most likely to be affected by that. Next, we have Generation X. This is my generation. People born between 1965 to 1980. So I was born in 1977. So I'm a mixture between Gen X and millennials, which we'll talk about next. So people who are Gen X, they suffered from the financial squeeze. So the reality is they've gone through lots of financial issues, lots of recessions, and they're called the sandwich generation. So we're having to look after elderly parents as well as relatively young kids. So the pressures on people within the Gen X, they experience high rates of midlife stress, career stagnation, anxiety, and divorce. Millennials, now they're very much misaligned. So these are people born between 1981 and 1996, and the age range is between 30 to 45 years old. And they're the people who have lived through COVID. in terms of fatherhood, they're expected to do it all, have a career, and also be a helicopter parent. And also, they cannot achieve the traditional markers of adulthood, buying a home or reach financial stability. In a way, they're the ones who are most impacted by the financial squeeze that we're all struggling with at the moment. And then finally, Gen Z. Those between the age of 14 to 29 years old. These are either entering the workplace at the moment or have already entered it. And they're the most under pressure in terms of toxic masculinity. The dating landscape is completely different to what we had when growing up. I mean, when I went to university, social media wasn't a major thing. People didn't film everything you did. We had the concept of privacy. Gen Zs are the digital natives. And as a result of that, they are very experienced in terms of technology, but also the rise of AI, the manosphere, all of those things affect them greatly. So, to summarize, mental health affects every single generation, but has slightly different pressures and flavors. But it boils down to these three things: money and job pressures. So we're all being financially squeezed. The pressure to man up. So this idea that you can't show vulnerability, you can't be weak, you have to also be the provider. How can you provide for your family? So this idea that you might not be able to financially secure your family or provide as much, that is a massive hit on terms of men's self-image and social image. And also this idea of hiding the pain, this idea of being strong and dealing with stress in harmful ways. That could be through alcohol or through addiction or through actually expressing it in anger, domestic violence, etc. So I touched on this idea of social media and the manosphere, and there's lots of really interesting documentaries about this. It's such a growing topic. And if you're interested, feel free to watch the Louis Theory documentary around this. But the idea here is that there's lots of pressure to be like this, like macho man and be hyper individualistic and being perfect, being perfect. But also this idea of looks maxing, which is like you have to be able to attract members of the opposite sex. You have to be this perfect looking person and go to the gym, and actually some of them take all sorts of supplements and steroids and hormones to be able to achieve this unattainable perfect image. It pushes this emotional repression instead of talking about this stuff, and it ruins men's real world support system. So it's about taking you away from your friends and family and puts you into this toxic bubble. And it also makes men feel like they don't have a choice. It makes them feel hopeless. So this is something to be aware of, and the algorithms push this stuff massively. So be aware for yourself. Don't go down this rabbit hole if you can help it, but also watch out for friends who might be going down this rabbit hole. We could run a whole webinar just on this topic. It's fascinating and scary as well. And it's something I'm scared of. I have a young son, and it's something I'm very aware of in terms of social media, in terms of him going down that rabbit hole. Paula, I know you've got children.
I do. Well,
worry you?
But Feras, very much. I mean, I do call them my children and get reminded very much that they're grown men. But yeah, I have one millennial, and my youngest is, excuse me, sorry, sitting in just this bracket at the moment, and it's very, very difficult because as a parent or somebody of our generation, I'm at similar age to you, it's hard to navigate because we don't understand it. We've never had experience of it, and we're up against algorithms and everything else that supports it. So I think as is key is openness and talking and being there. And it's so difficult sometimes for us to even understand it. But yeah, it is a huge thing that I think we all need a lot more education around.
It doesn't just support it. I would say it feeds it and
Yes.
and exacerbates it. And the secret
Yes.
is not to judge it. It's the secret is to be open and be that role model that people can
Yes.
come to you and ask questions or support, or when somebody talks about it, it's questioning it in a supportive way rather than
Completely.
pushing people to actually know what are
Yeah.
you doing.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's have a look at some more of the information. So in terms of money and job pressure, let's talk about that fact first. So in the UK, many men still feel a heavy burden to be the provider and to be successful in their careers. I have that pressure myself, even though, you know, me and my wife both work. But psychologically, this pressure is still very strong in terms of society. And all the surveys show that work stress and money worries are the main triggers for men's mental health issues. But there's also that loss of identity. If a man loses his job or falls into debt, it doesn't just hurt his wallet, it often makes him feel like a failure, which quickly leads to anxiety and depression, which we're also going to talk about. You know, what can you do if you're in that situation yourself? Paul, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that ILX has done webinars on financial
We have.
well-being and also how to deal with that. Do you have any
Yes.
insights when it
Yes,
comes to that?
certainly. Thanks, Feras. A huge part of well-being is obviously to look at the data and be aware of the key things, and financial well-being is one of the 5 key pillars of it. So we took a look at it, and we've offered some webinars over a lunchtime, which have been really successful in covering some of the areas that you mentioned there. So again, looking at the data, where do our people sit? They sit really across all of the data areas you mentioned, the boomers to Generation X to millennials, etc. So for us, it's about help with mortgages, understanding the world of mortgages, understanding wills, estate planning, understanding the importance of a credit score that might not have been explained to you by your parents or school. I know when I was at school, for us, all many years ago, we had commerce lessons and business studies lessons, and then I asked my youngest son, "Did you have any of that?" No. So it's very difficult. So we try to look at how we could help them and offer a series of financial webinars, which have really landed well. And I know from the feedback we've had, have helped people navigate some of these issues. And again, we go back to prevention. If we can do that and help people, it will prevent some people from either feeling the stress and anxiety that goes with it or falling into bad habits. So yeah, one of the many things I'm quite proud of. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And there's going to be further information at the end of the webinar related to this, where you can get further information on this. This idea of maintenance and prevention is key in all of this. So we're trying to raise awareness about this stuff, but also it's much harder to deal with your own and other people's mental health if you're in crisis mode. And there are things you can do when you're that, but it's so much harder. So the secret to this is to recognize it and deal with it early and prevent, same as you would maintain your car with the MOT and you check the oil and you refill it and you do all that stuff and you check the tire pressure. We need to do the same with our physical and our mental health. And we need to do that with our friends and our families and the people we manage as well. So the next one is the pressure to man up. So many boys are thought to be stoic, self-reliant, and hide their emotions, and that creates a dangerous habit. So it becomes ingrained that, you know, not to reach out when you need to. So only about a third of people sign up for NHS talking therapies, as we mentioned before, are men. And when people are asked why do they stay silent, it's just, I should be able to handle it myself. I don't want to be a burden. So they wait until they are in a complete crisis before speaking up. I was speaking to a emergency room doctor, and it's almost like a joke. They say if somebody says, "Oh, my wife sent me, or my wife made me come," it's not a big deal. They know it's something really serious, because usually the person will have left it until it's really bad. So because the idea is they don't want to be seen as, you know, a burden or a problem. So we are generalizing massively, you know, and some of this will overlap with women as well. but on the whole, men are far less likely to. And the third aspect is hiding the pain. So men are much more likely to use negative coping mechanisms. So 3 times more likely than women to develop a dependency on alcohol. They're much more likely to use drugs. And instead of crying, men often show depression through anger, irritability, or overworking. And we're going to talk about this overworking. And because of this, even doctors sometimes miss the warning signs. So let's now have a look at how poor mental health manifests in men. Because as I mentioned, the secret is to recognize it and look at the most common reactions and warning signs. So there's lots of these, but the 3 most common is stress, which we're going to discuss. And stress is only a reaction. Depression and anger. So let's have a look at how and why some of this stuff might happen. So I love this chart because it really helps me and other people to understand how this stuff can manifest at work. So if we look at the horizontal axis, that indicates the level of challenge, the workload and difficulty. So on the left is how easy something is, as on the right is how hard or challenging something is. The vertical axis is our performance and motivation. So I don't know about you, but when things are really easy, or I've done it before, I get bored. It's not very challenging. I'm not going to try very hard. Or if you're really good at sports or an activity, and then you have to play an amateur, it's not much fun. Or it's like watching a sports team. If you're going to watch something really amateur, it's not as exciting. The harder something is, the more challenging it is, the more our performance and motivation goes up. So EU stress means good stress. That's the feeling of excitement. That's the feeling of motivation. That's the feeling, if any of you support England, that's the feeling I get when watching England playing against a much better team, God forbid. This is going to be a good match. Are they going to win? And you're sat at the edge of your seat. That's positive stress. And funnily enough, that peak performance right at the top of the curve, that feels great. The problem is the sliding scale down. That sliding slope is very easy to go down. And all it's going to take is suddenly somebody being ill, ourselves or somebody else, or technology not working, or work. There might be a problem or an issue with it. We work with project management a lot. The project being held behind, or suddenly scope creep. And actually, for a little while, we can cope. For a little while, we can just get our head down, work late, and keep calm and carry on, as they say. But that's only designed. We are one of the most sophisticated biological machines. And our brain is the most sophisticated machine in the universe, as far as we're aware. And that can only cope with this extra strain for a short while. And then suddenly, if we keep carrying on not sleeping, not looking after our mental health, we start making mistakes, and we get that rapid decline, which can affect our physical as well as our mental health. We start taking out on other people. We stop enjoying our job or our lives. We start making mistakes. So the secret to this is not to let it get to that situation, but also recognize, okay, how can I have that buffer to be able to do it? So for those of you who are managers, have you put time aside in meetings to be able to talk to the people that you manage? Have you put 5 minutes in your diary for strategy or that mental, download where you can have that mindfulness? Do you take a break at lunchtime? And leadership, and this is a bit of tough love, leadership is about courage and leading by example. And if you're not, whether you're a man or a woman or any other gender, if you're not leading by example, don't expect the people you manage to do the same. Because if you're not looking after your mental health, if you're not taking your breaks and your lunch breaks and going for a walk and moving away from your computer, if you're not eating well, sleeping well, but also checking in with yourself and others, don't expect others. And then when you get that crisis, guess what's going to happen? People are going to burn out, quit, make mistakes. So we'll all know this. We're going to recognize it in a second. Paula, do you have any thoughts about what I've just talked about?
Oh, it's fascinating for us. I could not agree more. I tend to send a little email to everyone every now and again, just to remind them to take a walk at lunchtime. We all, and I'm as guilty as the next person, to think, I'll just do this one more email, I'll just send this one more proposal, or I can't get hold of that person until lunchtime. And then you hit 4 o'clock and it's you collapse. And it's just not good anyway, you know, to just breathe in a bit of nature. The science that sits behind it, you'll know that greater than I, Feras, but the science that sits behind, you know, start your day without your phone, without the TV. Just breathe in some air, stand outside, get some greenery, have a walk in nature. All of the things that we take for granted, you're just filling your own pot. That's all you're doing. You're filling your pot so you've got the energy to go again. And again, it's prevention, all of those things to prevent you from burning out. Because once you're at that point, whatever your job may be, it's such a hard road to come back from. Yeah. And when you think you can just take some ownership yourself and think, well, what's going to make me tick? What's going to make me feel a little bit better and easier to tackle? And then obviously you never know, you know, other people can take on the same habits. You, as Feras said, you set an example to your team members, to your colleagues, to your peers, that it's okay to take those 5 minutes, and it's far better to recoup and recharge and go again. So I think I love the slide, Feras, and it just sort of brings to life exactly the process if you don't.
Brilliant. And I want to say the research backs that up. Research shows that by taking these mindfulness breaks or breaks for our lunch, by walking away from our computer for short whiles, or looking after our mental health, which we're going to discuss, you're more productive. The quality of your work goes up. And actually, the longer hours you work, the less productive you are. That's what the research shows. So this is all about working smart, not about working for long hours. So let's see how we can recognize some of this stuff. So these are the most common physiological as well as psychological symptoms of stress. Some of them, you might get a couple of these, some people get lots. But for me, my indication that I'm stressed is I clench my teeth. I start becoming quiet. I start to become quite moody. Or as they say up in Derbyshire, mardy. So, and I actually want to isolate myself. And my sleep gets disrupted. And because that's happening, my wife knows this and recognizes this. She's quite good at saying to me, listen, let's take a break, or, let's have a cup of tea. And that's because I've told her to do that. So the secret is to recognize this in yourself, but also to tell other people to recognize it in you and have a plan to deal with it early on, rather than when it becomes too bad and it escalates. Our body reacts and our brain reacts in this way as a protection mechanism, the freeze, flight, or flight one, because it thinks we're in physical danger. But the reality is we're not in physical danger, and isolating yourself, not talking about it and not doing this stuff is not going to help you. In fact, it's going to make it worse. So that's why we need to step back and do the things that actually help us instead of harm us. So I mentioned about sleep. Actually, we run a whole webinar on sleep, and it's really fascinating. And some of the research around this, we're discovering more and more things. So sleep disruption, it profoundly impacts both our mind and our body. So short term, it causes daytime fatigue, cognitive impairment, that mind fog, and makes you much more emotional. Long term, increases the risk of serious health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and a weakened immune system. So you're more likely to get ill. And if you get ill just before a holiday or Christmas time, all those times, that's an indicator of stress, because your immune system temporarily increases while you're stressed, but when that stress decreases slightly or it can't keep up, it crashes because you can't maintain that high level. Now, I was telling Paula about a new bit of research around something called the lymphatic system. Now, what's fascinating about this, and I found, because I'm a biochemist, for my first degree was around biochemistry, is we've discovered that actually sleep isn't just about, you know, your mental health, it's physical maintenance as well. So it turns out that your spinal fluid actually goes into your brain to clean it out. It cleans up the metabolic waste and broken proteins. So while you're sleeping, it flushes out all of the muck and all of the waste that's in your brain. And if you're stressed out, if you're not sleeping, you're not looking after yourself, then what happens, these metabolic waste will, you know, it builds up. So same as with your car, if you don't change the oil, it all gets clogged up. If you don't put water in, it overheats. It's the same with our body. So that's why making sure we have good sleep hygiene, we look after our body and we look after our mind to be able to operate, because there's some serious consequences. You're much more likely to suffer from neurodegenerative disorders. You're much more likely to suffer from mental health as well as physical health issues if your sleep is disrupted. So how can we support our brain's cleaning process? Well, we need to prioritize 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Too much sleep isn't good. Too little isn't great. There is individual differences with this, but we need to aim roughly for around 7 to 9. And if you struggle with this, which we all do nowadays, much more likely to with devices and other things, try and limit your time on electronic devices. The NHS has some great resources around sleep, but it's also recognizing that it's not about getting stressed for not being able to sleep. Just trying to rest does the job. So try and limit alcohol because it disrupts sleep. Try sleeping on your side and maintain a consistent sleep schedule. That's something that is my weakest point. So, but I try as much as possible, not because I'm a night owl, to go to bed too late. It's about that consistency. So let's talk next about how can we manage that stress? How can we deal with it once we're there? So I'm going to show you a quote by a clinical psychologist. He's called Dr. Luke Sullivan. So stress isn't the sign of weakness. It's your mind and body letting you know that the load you're carrying has become too heavy. So this isn't about trying to get stronger or thinking you're not strong enough. This is recognizing that the weight we have is currently unbearable and we need to lighten it. So what Dr. Luke and several other psychologists have done is develop a system for helping us to deal with stress, and they call it managing the buckaroo effect. So if you're a Gen X like me and some of the elder millennials, you might remember this game called Buckaroo, and it's a physical game with this mule that you put weight on. You take turns. It's a little bit like Jenga, where you put different weights on. And the idea is when it becomes too much, it suddenly bucks and you lose the game. So, or if you don't know that analogy, if you try and ride a bucking bronco, it will try and push you off. So we need to make sure that we lessen the effect of this so the stress doesn't get kicked off. We don't want to put too much weight on. So step number 1 is we need to notice the signs early. So we talked about those indicators on a previous slide. So you need to know yours and notice those signs early in yourself and others. Secondly, check your load, not your strength. Do you have too much on? Are you taking too much on your shoulders in terms of work, in terms of personal life? Are you the main support mechanism for everybody? And is that too much? Set boundaries. What do you need to delegate? What do you need to say no to? What do you need to set boundaries for yourself? It's okay to say no, because if you say yes to everything, as I said, you're going to break. Nobody can do everything. So check who on the team can support you, or where can be some further support within the organization. Actually, do you need to have a word with your manager about your workload? And actually, can it be reprioritized? And can you bring in more resources? It's amazing how much extra help you can get by asking for it. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So ask for more resources at work, ask for more resources in your personal life, and get the help and support you need. Don't be afraid to reach out to friends or family or other people. Or if you can afford it, don't be afraid to actually pay for some extra support. So practically speaking, me and my wife both work, and we realized we were falling behind in terms of the housework, and we're both relatively bad at housework. I'm not great at it. So what we did is recognize that actually we need to bring in a cleaner, because we were getting stressed about the state of the house and we were spending too much time cleaning. And now we're very fortunate we can afford to bring in a cleaner once a week. I can't say enough good things about her, but this is the key part. It saved our marriage, first of all, but it's also saved our sanity. That's an example of if you're able to do so, bring in more resources. Can you outsource things? Can you do it? But if you can't afford to do stuff like that, can you use technology to do it? Or can you ask for more help? Schedule recovery, not just activity. Same as with running a marathon or going to the gym, the rest days are just as important as the training days. And if you just go to the gym every single day and do the same muscle, it will break. Same with our mind. If there's something really high intensity, make sure you put in some time later to decompress. Or if you're doing something socially that's really intense, make sure you've got some decompression time. My wife's not great at this. My wife tries to overschedule herself. I know we're talking about men's mental health, but she tries to overschedule herself, and then she's over-optimistic about things she can do sometimes on a weekend or with friends or otherwise, and she doesn't take into account. Actually, afterwards, she's going to crash mentally because it takes that energy out of her. So we make sure that we've got a bit of time just to decompress afterwards, and we don't schedule anything important after a big event or something else, just to have that recharge time. And I'll make sure that I do the same. And talk before you tip. If you're, just reach out. Know within your organization or who your friends are, but also there's all sorts of confidential phone lines, internal resources, and we're going to point you to some of them that you can talk to people. But ideally, just reach out and just have somebody who is an open ear. And finally, remember, stress is information, not identity. It's telling you something. If you're stressed, you're not a stressful person. It's giving you information. It's the warning light. It's the check engine light. And it's telling you need to maintain or look after yourself. So I find this checklist really useful for myself. But also, this is for those of you who are managers or in your team, take this and share it. The more we share this stuff, the more useful it is. Now, I want to share with you one more tool. And as I said, I've run a whole webinar just on this topic. But a really useful tool is mindfulness. And this is something I use all the time. So mindfulness is a form of meditation. And the research shows that being present in the moment and being mindful of where you are can help ground us and deal with immediate stress. So normally we want to react. We either want to react outwards or inwards. And having techniques such as breathing, slowing down, taking time is really useful. So I'm going to share with you the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique around mindfulness. And I use this, I find it really useful. And what's great about it is how quick it is. So I'm going to put Paula on the spot here. She doesn't know I was going to do this.
No, I don't know that. Carry on, Feras.
So the first step, the number 5, stands for 5 things you can see in your immediate environment. So this is a grounding technique. So can you name 5 things you can see around you currently, Paula?
Certainly, I can see my laptop. There are some chairs. There's actually a bicycle in the corner, but I am in an office space, so it sounds very random. Another table and some pot plants. Is that 5?
I
Yeah.
didn't count. Let's assume it
Okay,
is.
I think that's 5. Yeah.
4. I'd like you to name 4 things you can touch and feel, and how do they feel? And that can include your clothes or anything on your body.
Okay. I can touch my laptop. Again, feeling it's hard and it's there in front of me. I can touch the cushion that sits next to me on the chair here, which is nice and soft, much more preferable to touch. Let me see what else. From where I'm sitting, I'd like to say I can touch my toes, but I can now, thank goodness, but I won't touch those now. That's about it from where I am. I think it's more clothing and my laptop in front of me.
Perfect. 3 things you can hear where you're sat.
Okay, I can hear your lovely voice, Feras, of course. I can hear some surround sound, though. I have quite a few different people around me, so it's sort of a hub of people's voices.
One more?
I can actually hear some chimes in the distance. There is a huge cathedral in front of me, which I can hear, which actually is quite beautiful, but I can hear that now in the distance if I think hard enough.
Thank you. And 2 things you can smell.
Oh gosh, now this is quite a funny one, having just lost her sense of smell and taste, but that's a story for another day. I would normally say from where I am, perfume, which is a big thing for me as an emotive person, but normally I'd hope that somebody can smell it. I just can't at the moment. And this time of day is normally people's lunch is wafting past me as I sit here. So that's normally another thing.
And since you lost your sense of taste,
yeah,
I'm going to do this one.
Thank you.
I can still taste my cup of tea from earlier.
Oh, lucky you. Lucky you.
So, I know you're not stressed, Paula, but did that help? Did
yes. Yeah, definitely. Because I think it takes you from that acute pace to try and sort of think and use different parts of your brain to think, well, actually, how do I feel about that? What's going to calm me down? All of the things. And it's tapping into all my senses, which I think sometimes we forget. When you're in that peak of, as you went on the last slide before, when you're in the peak of stress, or you've got a lot on, you've got a lot of things to juggle and no real time to do it, you get to that pinch point where you're thinking, hold on, where am I? Am I safe? What's around me? What can I hear? And you tend to sort of zone back out of the moment, which does it affects your breathing a lot, I think, Feras, as well. That sort of stuff, if some breath work with mindfulness makes such a difference to alleviating the stress and obviously introducing a bit more calm, which is only a good thing. So yeah.
It's massive. We're going to talk about breath work. It's not just psychological, it's physiological. As Paula said, what this stuff is, it grounds you and stops you from wanting to react. Now, this takes 30 seconds for us to do. If we did this, 30 seconds. So before a difficult meeting or a difficult conversation, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, take just 30 seconds just to do this, and it makes a big difference. So this is a great thing to do just as a habit, as well as when you're in crisis. And I'll try to do. I'm not proud of this, but I'm much more likely to react in my personal life than in my work life. And I can tell when I'm about to just snap at one of the children because they've left a massive mess, and I'm not proud of it. I feel awful afterwards. Before I'm about to talk to them, I take this like 30 seconds or a minute and just do the breath work. I do the mindfulness, and it's amazing what difference it makes. So let's talk further about how to support ourselves and others. So, as we mentioned, spot the change first. And it's about changing behavior rather than the behavior itself. Human beings are creatures of habit. And suddenly, when they're acting different to how they normally act, that signals a problem. And funny enough, I was having a meeting last week, and one of the people, with 3 people I work with, but one of them is a close friend. And the lady who's a close friend rang me to check if I was okay. And I thought I was coming across normally, and I was. But actually, I was, because of the heat wave, I live down south. The heat wave, I hadn't slept very well that night. And she noticed that I wasn't quite my usual bubbly self. So I wasn't stressed, but I would definitely felt the fact that I hadn't had as good a night's sleep. And I thanked her and I really appreciated her, reaching out, checking, oh, is everything all right? Or I'm noticing that you're not quite as, bubbly as you normally are. When we're also reaching out to people, we need to make sure it's short, low pressure, and private. Don't put people on the spot. Take people to one side or give them a ring. My friend who called me, she called me separately after that meeting. Listen without trying to fix it. Our temptation is to provide solutions. They're not looking to us to provide solutions. What's going to work for you is not going to work for them. Recognize that helping is listening and showing empathy and not sympathy, which we're going to talk about. And it's important to recognize when you're at work, know your workplace boundaries. It's important to recognize that, we are colleagues and it might not be your place to solve other people's problems. It's about, pointing people in the right direction unless they're actively in crisis, which we're going to talk about. Now, I mentioned about empathy versus sympathy. Empathy is all about connecting with people. It's not about talking about yourself. It's taking the other person's perspective, trying not to judge, and recognizing the emotion of others. Now, the beauty of empathy is that you can completely disagree with somebody, or you might never have experienced it yourself. Just empathizing with them is all about recognizing how they feel, listening to how they feel. It's feeling with people, not trying to talk about how you would feel and how they should solve it. There's a great video on this by Brené Brown, and she's a psychologist, and she talks about empathy, but also she talks about anger and blame. So we've got a link there. Feel free to watch it. It's quite short, it's animated, it's beautiful, and her books are amazing. But she talks about the beauty of empathy, and I find it very difficult in my personal life. At work, I can empathize till the cows come home. In my personal life, not having to jump in and give advice or talk about what people need to do is very hard. So we need to recognize this is something we need to work at. So a couple of things to avoid. Don't call people out public in front of the team or in front of other people. Try and take them to one side. Don't force people to talk. Sometimes, if they shut the conversation down, it's not the right time, or maybe they don't want to. Just leave the door open. And also, it's important to recognize that, especially with PTSD, someone suffering PTSD, talking about it makes it worse, makes them relive it. And also recognize that you don't need to carry the burden alone. Recognize that if somebody might self-harm or you're deeply concerned for their safety, escalate it to HR or manager. Their safety overrides office confidentiality. And make sure that you get the training you need to become a mental health first aider or reach out to mental health first aiders. Paula, I know you've done some work around mental health first aid and training around that. Do you want to add?
Yeah, we have, Feras. It's one of the first things that we did here, which it's been wonderful, really. We also introduced by the gorgeous Mr. Michael Mosley, that's no longer with us, sadly, who used to share some fabulous articles and some podcasts. And I took from that, do you have 8 minutes? Because I'm very conscious that, and we live quite remote from each other. Some of us work in an office, some of us work remotely at home, and it's hard sometimes to think, well, I think I do need to speak to somebody, but how do I do it? How do I sort of jump on a Teams call and sort of launch into something that they might not be in the right place. The person receiving that information might not be in the right place. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. So we introduced, do you have 8 minutes? So we have 24 mental health first aiders here at ILX, which is a huge proportion, about 30% of our business. And that varies in different people's age. And obviously we have both male and female in that role. But also if somebody wanted to reach out, we just pop a message in Teams or email, do you have 8 minutes? And then the person receiving that message will know to be in a place to receive it, to be open, to be able to listen without interruption. And obviously gives the other person a chance to have a conversation, which might just make them feel a little bit lighter or enable that mental health first aider to possibly signpost them to the area of support that they will need from the training they've received. So it's an ongoing process here, and it's something that we're hugely proud of. But yeah.
Thank you. And you should be proud of it. Isn't it mentioned the word courage? Do you know the difference between courage and bravery? What's the difference in
That's
your
a tricky
opinion?
one. Just trying to think, how would I be courageous? How would I be brave? I think, I don't know, for us, I think courage would be take a little bit more thought, be a bit more measured, whether bravery is a bit more gung-ho. I would be brave. I'd do a bungee jump. I never would, by the way. But I would do a bungee jump. I would be brave or daft, whichever it may be. I don't know. It's a fine one, that, really.
It is fine. There's a lot of overlap
Yeah.
between them.
Yeah.
But if I had to separate them, bravery is generally, it's the big gung-ho. It's not feeling the fear.
Yeah.
Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Okay, that's where that comes from. I see.
And leadership is all about courage. Leadership is about having the courage to deal with something. It's about the courage to take yourself out of your comfort zone. It's the courage to delegate, to say no, to role model behavior. So it does take courage to do this. And if you feel apprehensive about moving out of your comfort zone, that's normal. But courage is important. Thank you. So here's some quick ways to manage your mental health yourself. So physical exercise, all the research shows that any form of physical exercise done regularly boosts our mental health massively. It doesn't have to be high intensity. So going for a walk, going to the gym, doing any sport or any movement makes a massive difference. Get some sleep. We've already talked about that one. Breathing and meditation. So what's fascinating about that is it's not just psychological, it is physiological. If you have a sports watch like mine, you can measure your heart rate. And if you do some breathing exercises, and a lot of smartwatches will do one for you, you'll notice that your heart rate will go down. And that's because it sends a signal to the stress parts of the brain that you're no longer in danger, to the amygdala, to not trigger adrenaline and cortisol, and it actively slows our heart rate and calms us down. So before a big meeting or before something that I need to, be focused on, I slow down and focus my breathing. We are what we eat, and it's been shown that eating healthily and balanced diet can really help our mental health. And what's really fascinating is it affects our gut biome, basically the good bacteria in our gut. So if you eat very sugary food, our gut biome gets affected, and it's much more likely that gut biome interacts with our brain to cause us stress. Whereas if you eat healthy food and complex carbohydrate, it affects our mental health in a positive way, as well as our physical health. Also, doing things that give you joy, fun stuff. Going out with friends, having a chat, doing your hobbies. But the thing I find really useful is what's called the 666 method. If something's making me upset or stressing me out, I ask myself, you know what, is this going to matter in 6 days? Is it going to matter in 6 months? How much is it going to matter in 6 years? On a scale of 1 to 10. And just being able to put it in perspective really helps. That doesn't mean that everything will be, resolved, but it's recognizing that not everything will last forever. And when we are in crisis, it's just a period. So I'm going to pass you now on to Paula, which is perfect timing for her coming back.
Thank you, Feras. And just a reminder to you all, if you do have a question, or if there's anything we've covered you want to know a little bit more about, or you'd like to specifically for us or I, then just pop into the chat. We'll happily take some messages from you. So a little bit more about how here at ILX we support health and wellbeing. As I mentioned, I've been the dedicated wellbeing manager here for just over 2 years now, and very blessed and very privileged to do that role for everybody I work with and for here at ILX. We touched on the mental health first aid support that we did, and that's something that's ongoing here, which we actively sort of discuss and talk about. And I know that it is mentioned in obviously the meetings that we have internally. But again, for your own mental health or that with your managers, it's always key to sort of, as Feras mentioned, just to always try and have that conversation, just to try and prevent things before they may happen. It's hard from a perspective of a global organization to think, well, how can we do some wellbeing initiatives that's going to cover people in an office, going to cover people at home, people globally, all around the world. So I think that the biggest thing for me when I did some research around it was the importance of getting out in nature and the importance of gardening. Now, whether that's, I don't know, your first ever potted plant, or you're creating a new sunflower seed with your children, or whether you're an avid gardener. And I've come to realise here at ILX, we have some fabulous gardeners. It's amazing. And some of the pictures I've shared with you there on the slide. But it's been a way of bringing people together and for them to talk about what they've created, what they've achieved, but also how it's made them feel. Sort of, you know, leaving, shutting down the laptop of an evening and going out and just being in their beautiful gardens that they've created alone or with their family and friends. It's a huge thing, and it's something that we've recently done, but I think we will carry on into obviously the years ahead. Coffee roulette was suggested to me by a wonderful colleague, Sidra, and she had done this in a different organisation. It's something that we try and connect with, particularly for those people who are remote. So it's something that we did after COVID, and people are randomly selected to have a coffee date over lunch, where hopefully they're going to talk about things that are non-work related. So it gives you a chance to meet someone you've never worked with, or have a conversation that you might never have had, or to sort of go over what would be a water cooler moment. So you just check in with people, which goes really, really well. And a lot of people still remain active in that, and we find that that helps them as well. Over the next few months, I'm going to be creating some regional hubs as well around the subject that we're talking about now, because I think it's all well and good. We did some fabulous work with menopause, and some of the brave people I work with shared their stories on webinars like this and out in the ether. And I think it's really helped the females amongst our organisation. But for the men, my thoughts are to set up some regional hubs, whether that's men sort of helping other men, whichever age group that they sit within, and the challenges that they help. So that will be something that's forthcoming to try and help, obviously, the men in our business, and obviously their family and friends as well. We touched on the financial wellbeing webinar series, and the feedback we've had on that has been fantastic in terms of the benefits for people to support them as well. So that's a wonderful thing. And also, finally, the volunteering days, which really help people's health and well-being. So we're lucky enough to have one day a year where we can choose a charity, and we're allowed to go out there and spend that day with that charity and volunteer, which I think is wonderful. We've had people attending the Swan Sanctuary, other people doing supports with charities and different organisations, which has really, really helped. So again, something that long may it continue. So, thanks, Feras.
No problem. So Paula's mentioned quite a few these already. And if you want to find out more information, reach out to Paula, find out more about the great work or how to set up within your organisation.
Yeah, please do.
Sorry, Paula.
No, please do. Carry on. Sorry, Feras. Yeah.
And I'm going to put up some further resources. So the reality is, don't suffer on your own, or if you want some further support within your organisation or outside, or if you're a manager who wants to support their team, there's lots of resources out there, from Andy's Man Club, there's employee assistance program, there's occupational health. You can self-refer yourself to NHS psychological therapies. You know, there's lots and lots of resources out there. This is a small snapshot, and we are going to be emailing them out after this, or you can follow the links yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So hopefully this has given you a flavor and taste of this massive topic. And funnily enough, we're doing a follow-up session around psychological safety in August. So for those of you who are managers, you know, psychological safety is really important, not just from a psychological point of view, but from an output point of view. So I'm going to pass you on to Gemma, who can do the wrap up for us.
Great. Oh, thanks both. Honestly, that's really fascinating. And and it's just such an important topic to cover. And for us, as you said, we could probably do a lot of different sessions. So I'm sure we will start planning some others in over the next few months. But as I said, the webinar's been recorded today, so you'll receive an email tomorrow with the link. We'll also add all those links that are on that slide there, so you can access them via the email, and the YouTube link to the video that Feras also showed us. But yes, and as Paula said, if you've got any questions, also please do reach out to your relationship managers if you'd like to discuss anything that we do here to support health and well-being. So I was just looking to see, and we haven't had any questions. So I think, but as I said, please just reach out directly to us, and we're basically bang on time. So
wow, that's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to listen, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks. Oh,
Thank
we just actually
you.
had someone just a hand up.
Yeah.
Not sure if someone had a
hand
question.
up or a thumbs up.
That might have been me when I said thank you.
Thanks, Raz. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.